So, Carol Clarkson is the head of English. She has been for quite a few years here, a young and dynamic head of the English department. She has many strings to her bow. Amongst her interests are postmodernism, jurisprudence, and the creative writing of JM Coetzee. She started off a research group. It was really an informal reading and interest group on the writings of JM Coetzee amongst her graduate students, and that has truly grown to an international assemblage where we have people jetting in to share their insights, give seminars, run workshops, and so forth. So Carol deserves a lot of credit for keeping literary studies, burning brightly up here near the top of the mountain. Her own book, Counter Voices, is well known, has been very well received as a fresh critical voice on the novels of JM Coetzee, and I'm afraid that threatens to be not her last word or book on the subject. So without further ado, with great pleasure, I'll call upon Carol Clarkson.
First, thank you, Raj, for that extravagant introduction. I just want to take the opportunity to thank you first, in case I don't get a chance a little later on, to thank you for all your help in organizing this event, and to thank you also for your continued support and encouragement that you've shown to us ever since I first arrived here. So thank you, Raj. And of course, it's a great privilege and an honor for me to introduce and to welcome to you John Coetzee and Dorothy Driver. Thank you so much for coming too. Our distinguished guest this evening is well known to us in many different ways at the University of Cape Town as JM Coetzee, the writer, Nobel Prize laureate, and twice winner of the Booker Prize, as John M. Coetzee, the Animal Rights Group patron and writer, as Professor Coetzee of the English department at UCT in the arts block here, and as John, a colleague, a fellow student, a writer, a friend. On behalf of everyone here, I would like to take this opportunity to say, welcome home, John. It is indeed a privilege and an honor to be extending this welcome to you and to Dorothy, to be extending this welcome to one of the world's most highly acclaimed writers, to a person whose work, on each reading and rereading, amuses, shocks, challenges, provokes, disturbs, and inspires us by turns. Tonight's reading event means something further to us still. In a digital age of television, film, computer games, email, cell phones, Mixit, WhatsApp, Facebook, and Google+, our modes of participating in human narratives and exchanges of meaning are becoming ever more connected, if ever more distant and virtual. Nevertheless, for most of us, some of our earliest and most vivid childhood memories are of having stories read to us at home in the early hours of the evening. Surely these early childhood memories, perhaps they are phylogenetic, primal human memories, have something to do with so many of us here being in the business of literature and literary study. And still, what a rare and extraordinary thing it is for us as adults today to have a story read to us. So, welcome home, John, and thank you for reading to us from new work by JM Coetzee.
Thanks very much, Carol. It's a great pleasure to be back in Cape Town and back at UCT for this reading. I'll be reading this afternoon from New Fiction, a book to be published next year. I had hoped that the book would appear with a blank cover and a blank title page, so that only after the last page had been read would the reader meet the title, namely The Childhood of Jesus. But in the publishing industry, as it is at present, that is not allowed. There are three personages: a boy, David, his mother, Inez, and a man, Simon, who is looking after them. There's also a dog. The book is in English, but it is to be understood as taking place in a Spanish-speaking country, and all the exchanges are to be understood as having been translated from Spanish. The boy is to be understood as about 5 years old. The extract I'll be reading is from the middle of the book, and therefore it refers to events here and there which have taken place before. I'm not going to waste time explaining each single internal reference. A little obscurity never did anyone any harm. As we begin, Simon has checked a book out of the library so as to begin teaching the boy to read. The book is Don Quixote. Sprawled on his bed, the boy is absorbed in his book. "Hello," he greets him. "How is the Don today? What is he up to?" The boy ignores the question. "What does that word say?" he asks, pointing. "It says Aventuras, with a big letter A, the adventures of Don Quixote." "And that word?" "Fantastico, with an F. And that word, remember the big letter Q, is Quixote. You can always recognize Quixote by the big Q. I thought you told me you knew the letters." "I don't want to read letters, I want to read the story." "That is not possible. A story is made up of words, and words are made up of letters. Without letters, there would be no story, no Don Quixote. You have to know the letters." "Show me which is Fantastico." He places the boy's forefinger on the word. There. The fingernails are clean and neatly paired, whereas his own hand, which used to be as soft and clean, is cracked and dirty, with grime worked deep into the cracks. The boy squeezes his eyes shut, holds his breath, opens his eyes wide. Fantastico. Excellent. You have learned to recognize the word fantastico. There are two ways of learning to read, David. One way is to learn the words one by one, as you are doing. The other way, which is quicker, is to learn the letters that make up the words. There are only 27 of them. Once you have learned them, you can spell out strange words for yourself without having me to tell you each time. The boy shakes his head. "I want to read the first way. Where is the giant?" "The giant who is really a windmill?" He turns the pages. "There is the giant." He places the boy's forefinger on the word gigante. The boy closes his eyes. "I'm reading through my fingers," he announces. It doesn't matter how you read, through your eyes or through your fingers like a blind person, as long as you read. "Show me Quixote with a Q." The boy stabs at the page with his finger. "There." "No." He moves the boy's finger to the right place. "There is Quixote with a big Q." The boy snatches his hand away petulantly. "That's not his real name, don't you know?" It may not be his worldly name, the name his neighbors know him by, but it is the name he chooses for himself and the name we know him by. It's not his real name. What is his real name? Abruptly, The boy withdraws into himself. "You can go," he mutters. "I'm going to read by myself." "Very well, I will go. When you come to your senses again, when you decide you want to learn to read properly, call me. Call me and tell me the Don's real name." "I won't. It's secret." A day passes before his next visit. He finds the boy poring over the book as before. He tries to speak, but the boy gestures impatiently, "Shh," and turns the page with a quick, whipping motion as though a snake that lay behind it might strike him. The picture shows Don Quixote trussed in a cradle of rope, being lowered into a hole in the earth. "Do you want me to help? Shall I tell you what is happening?" he asks. The boy nods. He takes up the book. This is an episode called The Cave of Montesinos. Having heard much about the Cave of Montesinos, Don Quixote resolved to see for himself its famed wonders. So he instructed his friend Sancho and the learned scholar, the man with the hat must be the learned scholar, to lower him into the dark cave and then to wait patiently for his signal to haul him up again. For a full hour, Sancho and the scholar sat waiting at the mouth of the cave. What is a scholar? A scholar is a man who has read lots of books and learned lots of things. For a full hour, Sancho and the scholar sat waiting until at last they felt a tug on the rope and began to haul, and thus Don Quixote came riding up into the light. So Don Quixote wasn't dead? No, he wasn't dead. The boy heaves a happy sigh. "That's good, isn't it?" he says. "Yes, of course it's good. But why did you think he was dead? He is Don Quixote. He is the hero. He is the hero and he is a magician. You tie him up with ropes and put him in a box, and when you open the box, he isn't there, he has escaped." "Oh, did you think Sancho and the scholar tied Don Quixote up?" No. If you were to read the book instead of just looking at the pictures and guessing at the story, you would know that they used the rope to haul him out of the cave, not to tie him up. Shall I go on? The boy nods. Graciously, Don Quixote thanked his friends. Then he regaled them with an account of all that had passed in the Cave of Montesinos. In the 3 days and 3 nights he had spent under the earth, he said, he had seen many wondrous sights, not the least of them waterfalls whose cascades were not drops of water but sparkling diamonds, and processions of princesses in satin robes, and even, the greatest marvel of all, the lady Dulcinea mounted on a white steed with a jewel-encrusted bridle, who stopped and kindly spoke to him. "But, your honor," said Sancho, "surely you are mistaken, for you were under the earth not 3 days and 3 nights, but a mere hour at most." "No, Sancho," said Don Quixote gravely. 3 days and 3 nights I was absent. If it seemed to you a mere hour, that was because you fell into a slumber while you waited and were oblivious of the passing of time." Sancho was about to argue, but then thought better of himself, remembering how obstinate Don Quixote could be. "Yes, your honor," he said, glancing at the learned scholar and winking, "you must be right. For 3 whole days and 3 whole nights we were in a slumber until your return. But pray tell us more of the lady Dulcinea and what passed between her and yourself." Gravely, Don Quixote regarded Sancho. "Sancho," he said, "O friend of little faith, when will you learn? When will you learn?" And he fell silent. Sancho scratched his head. "Your Honor," he said, "I will not deny it is hard to believe you spent 3 days and 3 nights in the Cave of Montesinos, when to us it seemed a mere hour. And so I will not deny it is hard to believe that there are, at this very minute, troops of princesses beneath our feet, and ladies prancing on snow-white steeds, and such like. Now, if the Lady Dulcinea had bestowed on your Honor some token of her troth, such as a ruby or a sapphire from the bridle of her mount, which you could show to miserable doubters like ourselves, it would be a different matter." "A ruby or a sapphire," mused Don Quixote. "I should show you a ruby or a sapphire as proof I am not lying." "So to speak," said Sancho, "so to speak. And if I were to show you such a ruby or sapphire, Sancho, what then?" "Then I would fall to my knees, your Honor, and kiss your hand, and beg your pardon for ever doubting you, and I would be your faithful follower to the end of time." He closes the book. "And," says the boy, "and nothing. That is the end of the chapter. Until tomorrow, there is no more." The boy takes the book from his hands, reopens it to the picture of Don Quixote in the rope truss, stares hard at the surrounding body of print. "Show me," he says in a small voice. "Show you what?" "Show me the end of the chapter." He points to the end of the chapter. "See, here begins a new chapter called Don Pedro y las Marionetas." Don Pedro and the puppets. The Cave of Montesinos is behind us. But did Don Quixote show Sancho the ruby? I don't know. Senor Benengeli does not say. Perhaps he did, perhaps he didn't. But really, did he have a ruby? Really was he under the ground 3 days and 3 nights? I don't know. Maybe for Don Quixote, time is not as it is for us. Maybe what is for us, the blink of an eyelid, is for Don Quixote a whole eon. But if you are convinced that Don Quixote ascended from the cave with rubies in his pockets, maybe you should write your own book saying so. Then we can return Senor Benengeli's book to the library and read yours instead. Unfortunately, however, before you can write your book, you will have to learn to read. I can read. No, you can't. You can look at the page and move your lips and make up stories in your head, but that is not reading. For real reading, you have to submit to what is written on the page. You have to give up your own fantasies. You have to stop being silly. You have to stop being a baby. Never before has he spoken so directly to the child, so harshly. I don't want to read your way, says the child. I want to read my way. There was a man of double deed and nandy need. And when he rode, he was a horse, and when he walked, he was a porse. That is nothing but nonsense. There is no such thing as a porse. Don Quixote is not nonsense. You can't just make up nonsense and pretend you are reading about him. I can. It's not nonsense, and I can read. It's not your book, it's my book. And with a frown, he returns to whipping furiously through the pages. On the contrary, it's Senor Benengeli's book that he gave to the world, therefore it belongs to all of us in one sense, and to the library in another sense, but not to you alone in any sense. And stop tearing at the pages. Why are you handling the book so roughly? Because if I don't hurry, a hole will open. Open up where? Between the pages. That's nonsense. There's no such thing as a hole between the pages. There is a hole. It's inside the page. You don't see it because you don't see anything. Stop that now, says Inez. For an instant, he thinks she is addressing the child. For an instant, he thinks she has at last aroused herself to rebuke him for his willfulness. But no, it is he at whom she is glaring. I thought you wanted him to learn to read, he says. Not at the cost of all this bickering. Find another book. Find a simpler book. This Don Quixote is too difficult for a child. Take it back to the library. No. The boy clutches the book tightly. You are not going to take it. It's my book. Since Inez took it over, the apartment has lost its once austere air. It has, in fact, become cluttered. And not only with her many possessions, worst is the corner by the boy's bed, where a cardboard box overflows with objects he has collected and brought home. Pebbles, pine cones, withered flowers, bones, shells, bits of crockery and old metal. Isn't it time to throw out that mess, he suggests? It's not a mess, says the boy, it's things I am saving. He gives the box a push with his foot. It's rubbish. You can't save every last thing you come across. It's my museum, says the boy. A load of old rubbish is not a museum. Things need to have some value before they can find a place in a museum. What is value? If things have value, it means that people in general prize them, agree they are valuable. An old broken cup has no value. No one prizes it. I prize it. It's my museum, not yours. He turns to Inez. Does this have your blessing? Let him be. He says he feels sorry for old things. You can't feel sorry for an old cup without a handle. The boy stares at him uncomprehendingly. A cup has no feelings. If you threw it away, it wouldn't care. It wouldn't be hurt. If you're going to feel sorry for an old cup, you may as well feel sorry for, he casts about in exasperation, for the sky, the air, the earth beneath your feet. You might as well feel sorry for everything. The boy continues to stare. Things are not meant to last forever, he says. Each thing has its natural term. That old cup had a good life. Now it is time for it to retire and make way for a new cup. The stubborn look with which he is by now so familiar settles on the boy's face. No, he says, I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to let you take it away. It's mine. As Inez gives way to him on every front, the boy grows more and more headstrong. Not a day passes without an argument, without raised voices and stamped feet. He urges her to send him to school. The apartment is becoming too small to hold him, he says. He needs to face up to the real world. He needs wider horizons. But she continues to resist. Where does money come from? Asks the boy. It depends on what kind of money you have in mind. Coins come from a place called the mint. Is the mint where you get your money? No, I get my money from the paymaster at the docks. You saw that. Why don't you go to the mint? Because the mint won't just give us money. We have to work for it. We have to earn it. Why? Because that is the way the world is. If we didn't have to work for our money, if the mint just handed money out to everyone, it would cease to have any value. He takes the boy to a football match and pays at the turnstile. Why do we have to pay? Asks the boy. We didn't have to pay before. This is the championship game, the last game of the season. At the end of the game, the winners get cake and wine. Someone has to collect money to buy the cake and the wine. Unless the baker gets money for his cake, he won't be able to buy the flour and sugar and butter for the next cake. That's the rule. If you want to eat cake, then you have to pay for it. And the same goes for wine. Why? Why? The answer to all your why questions, past, present, and future, is because that is the way the world is. The world was not made for our convenience, my young friend. It is up to us to fit in. The boy opens his mouth to reply. Swiftly, he presses a finger to his lips. No, he says, no more questions. Be quiet and watch the football. After the game, they return to the apartment. Inez is busy at the stove. A smell of scorched meat is in the air. Supper time, she calls out. Go and wash your hands. I'll be off now, he says. Goodbye, I'll see you tomorrow. Do you have to go? Says Inez. Wouldn't you like to stay and watch him have his supper? The table is set for one, for the little prince. From the frying pan, Inez transfers 2 slim sausages to his plate. In an arc around them, she sets the halves of a boiled potato, slices of carrot, and florets of cauliflower, over which she drips grease from the pan. Bolivar the dog, who has been sleeping by the open window, rouses himself and pads over. Sausages, says the boy. Sausages are the best food. I haven't seen sausages in a long while, he remarks to Inez. Where did you buy them? Diego got them. He's friendly with someone in the kitchen at La Residencia. The boy cuts his sausages into bits, cuts his potatoes, chews vigorously. He seems quite untroubled by the 2 adults standing over him or by the dog resting his head on his knee, watching his every move. Don't forget your carrots, says Inez. They make you see in the dark. Like a cat, says the boy. Like a cat, says Inez. The boy eats his carrots. What is cauliflower good for? He asks. Cauliflower is good for your health. Cauliflower is good for your health and meat makes you strong. Right. That's right. Meat makes you strong. I must go, he says to Inez. Meat does make you strong, but maybe you should think twice before feeding him sausages. Why, says the boy, why should Inez think twice? Because of what they put in sausages. What goes into sausages is not always good for you. What do they put in sausages? Well, what do you think? Meat. Yes, but what kind of meat? Kangaroo meat. Now you're being silly. Elephant meat. They put pig meat in sausages. Not always, but sometimes. And pigs aren't clean animals. They don't eat grass like sheep and cows. They eat anything they come across. He glances at Inez. She glares back, tight-lipped. For instance, they eat poo. Out of the toilet? No, not out of the toilet, but if they happen to come across poo in a field, they will eat it, without thinking twice. They are omnivorous, which means they eat everything. They even eat each other. That's not true, says Inez. Is there poo in sausages, says the boy. He has laid his fork down. He is talking nonsense. Don't listen to him. There is no poo in your sausage. I am not saying there is actual poo in your sausage, he says, but there is poo meat in it. Pigs are unclean animals. Pig meat is poo meat. But that is just my opinion. Not everyone will agree. You must decide for yourself. I don't want any more, says the boy, pushing his plate aside. Bolivar can have it. Finish your plate and I'll give you a chocolate, says Inez. No. I hope you feel proud of yourself, says Inez, turning on him. It's a matter of hygiene, ethical hygiene. If you eat pig, you become like a pig. In part, not wholly, but in part, you partake of the pig. You are crazy, says Inez. She addresses the boy. Don't listen to him, he has gone crazy. I am not crazy, it's called consubstantiation. Why else do you think there are cannibals? A cannibal is a person who takes consubstantiation seriously. If we eat another person, we embody that person. That's what cannibals believe. What's a cannibal? Asks the boy. Cannibals are savages, says Inez. You don't have to worry, there are no cannibals here. Cannibals are just a fable. What's a fable? A story from the old days that isn't true anymore. Tell me a fable. I want to hear a fable. Tell me a fable about the three brothers or about the brothers in the sky. I don't know anything about brothers in the sky. Now finish your supper. If you won't tell him about brothers, tell him about Little Red Riding Hood, he says. Tell him about how the wolf gobbles up the little girl's grandmother and turns into a grandmother, a wolf grandmother, by consubstantiation. The boy gets up, scrapes the food from his plate into the dog's bowl, and puts the plate in the kitchen sink. The dog gobbles down the sausages. I'm going to be a lifesaver, the boy announces. Diego is going to teach me in the swimming pool. That's nice, he says. What else are you planning to be besides a lifesaver and an escape artist and a magician? Nothing, that's all. Pulling people out of swimming pools and escaping from boxes and doing magic tricks are hobbies, not a career, not a life's work. How are you going to earn an actual living? The boy casts a glance at his mother as if searching for guidance. Then, emboldened, he says, I don't have to earn a living. We all have to earn a living. It's part of the human condition. Why? Why? That is not how we carry on a proper conversation. How are you going to eat if you spend all your time saving people and escaping from chains and refusing to work? Where will you get the food to make you strong? From the shop. You will go to the shop and they will give you food for nothing. Yes. And what will happen when the people in the shop have given all their food away for nothing? What will happen when the shop is empty? Serenely, with a strange little smile on his lips, the child answers, why? Why what? Why is the shop empty? Because if you have X loaves of bread and you give them all away for nothing, then you have no loaves left and no money with which to buy new loaves. Because X minus X equals 0, equals nothing, equals emptiness, equals an empty stomach. What is X? X is any number, 10 or 100 or 1,000. If you have something and you give it away, you don't have it anymore. The boy screws his eyes shut and pulls a funny face. Then he begins to giggle. He grips his mother's skirt and presses his face against her thigh and giggles until he is red in the face. What is it, my darling? Says Inez. But the boy will not stop laughing. "You had better go," says Inez. "You're upsetting him." "I am educating him. If you would send him to school, there would be no need for these home lessons." The boy has made friends with an old man in Block E who keeps a pigeon cot on the roof. According to the letterbox in the lobby, his name is Palamaki, but the boy calls him Señor Paloma, Mr. Dove. Señor Paloma lets the boy feed the birds by hand. He has even given him a pigeon of his own, a pure white bird, whom the boy names Blanco. Blanco is a placid, even torpid bird who allows himself to be taken for walks sitting on the boy's outstretched wrist and sometimes on his shoulder. He shows no inclination to fly away or indeed to fly at all. "I think Blanco's wings may have been clipped," he says to the boy. "That would explain why he doesn't fly." "No," says the boy. "Look." He tosses the bird in the air. It flaps its wings languidly, circles once or twice, then settles on his shoulder again and preens itself. "Señor Paloma says Blanco can carry messages," says the boy. He says, "If I get lost, I can tie a message to Blanco's leg and Blanco will fly home and then Señor Paloma will come and find me." "That's very kind of Señor Paloma. You will have to make sure you carry a pencil and paper around with you and a piece of string so that you can tie the paper to Blanco's leg. What will you write? Show me what you will write when you want to be rescued." They are crossing the empty playground. In the sandpit, the boy squats down, smooths the surface, and with a finger begins to write. He reads over his shoulder. O, then E, then a character he cannot make out, then O again, then X and again X. The boy rises. "Read it," he says. "I'm having difficulty. Is it Spanish?" The boy nods. "No, I give up. What does it say?" "It says, 'Follow Blanco. Blanco is my best friend.'" "Indeed. It used to be that Fidel was your best friend, and before that, El Rey. What has happened that Fidel is no longer your friend and his place has been taken by a bird?" "Fidel is too old for me. Fidel is rough." "I've never seen Fidel being rough. Did Inez tell you he was rough?" The boy nods. "Fidel is a perfectly gentle boy. I am fond of him, and you used to be fond of him too. Let me tell you something. Fidel is hurt because you no longer play with him. In my opinion, you are treating Fidel badly. In fact, you are treating him roughly. In my opinion, you should spend less time with Señor Paloma on the roof and more time with Fidel." The boy strokes the bird on his arm. The rebuke is accepted without demur, or perhaps he simply lets the words wash over him. "Furthermore, I think you should inform Inez that it is time for you to go to school. You should insist on it. I know you are very clever and have taught yourself to read and write, but in real life you have to be able to write like other people. It's no use sending Blanco off with a message tied to his leg if no one can read it, not even Señor Paloma. I can read it. You can read it because you're the one who wrote it. But the whole point about messages is that other people need to be able to read them. If you get lost and send a message to Señor Paloma to come and save you, he must be able to read your message. Otherwise, you will have to tie yourself to Blanco's leg and tell him to fly you home." The boy gives him a puzzled look. "But," he says. Then he sees it is a joke, and they both laugh and laugh. They're in the playground of the East Blocks. He's been pushing the boy on the swings so high that he has been crying out with fear and pleasure. Now they sit side by side, catching their breath, drinking in the last of the twilight. "Can Inez have twins out of her tummy?" asks the boy. Of course she can. It may be uncommon, but it is possible. If Inez had twins, then I could be the third brother. Do twins always have to be together? They don't have to, but usually they prefer it. Twins are naturally fond of each other, like the star twins. If they were not, then they might go wandering off separately and be lost in the sky. But their love for each other holds them together. It will go on holding them together until the end of time. But they are not together, the star twins, not really together. No, that's true. They are not tight up against each other in the sky. There is a tiny gap between them. That is the way of nature. Think of lovers. If lovers were tight up against each other all the time, they would no longer need to love each other. They would be one. There would be nothing for them to want. That is why nature has gaps. If everything were packed tightly together, everything in the universe, then there would be no you or me or Inez. You and I would not be talking to each other right now. There would just be silence, oneness and silence. So, on the whole, it's good that there should be gaps between things, that you and I should be two instead of one. But we can fall. We can fall down the gap, down the crack. A gap is not the same thing as a crack, my boy. Gaps are part of nature, part of the way things are. You can't fall down a gap and disappear. It just doesn't happen. A crack is quite different. A crack is a break in the order of nature. It's like cutting yourself with a knife or tearing a page in two. You keep saying we must watch out for cracks, but where are these cracks? Where do you see a crack between you and me? Show me. The boy is silent. The twins in the sky are like twins on earth. They're also like numbers. Is this all too difficult for a child? Perhaps. But the boy will absorb his words, he must hope for that, absorb them and mull over them, and perhaps begin to see the sense in them. Like 1 and 2. 1 and 2 are not the same. There is a difference between them, which is a gap, but not a crack. That is what makes it possible for us to count, to get from 1 to 2 without worrying about falling. Can we go and see them one day, the twins in the sky? Can we go in a ship? I suppose so, if we can find the right kind of ship. But it would take a long time to get there. The twins are very far away. No one has ever been to visit them yet, not to my knowledge. And this, and he stamps with his foot on the ground, this is the only star we human beings have ever visited. The boy stares at him in puzzlement. This isn't a star, he says. It is. It just doesn't look like a star from close up. But it doesn't shine. Nothing shines from close up. From a distance, however, everything shines. You shine, I shine, the stars certainly shine. The boy seems pleased. Are all the stars numbers? He asks. No, I said the twins were like numbers, but that was just a way of speaking. No, the stars are not numbers. Stars and numbers are quite different things. I think the stars are numbers. I think that is number 11. He stabs a finger up at the sky, and that is number 50, and that is number 33333. Ah, do you mean, can we give each star a number? That would certainly be one way of identifying them, but a very dull way, very uninspired. I think it's better that they have proper names like Bear and Evening Star and Twins. No, silly, I said each star is a number. He shakes his head. Each star is not a number. Stars are like numbers in a few respects, but in most respects they are quite unlike them. For instance, the stars are scattered all over the heavens chaotically, whereas the numbers are like a fleet of ships sailing in order, each knowing its place. They can die. Numbers can die. What happens to them when they die? Numbers can't die. Stars can't die. Stars are immortal. Numbers can die. They can fall out of the sky. That's not true. Stars can't fall out of the sky. The ones that do seem to fall, the shooting stars, aren't real stars. As for numbers, if a number were to fall out of the ranks, there would be a crack, a break, and that is not how the numbers work. There is never any crack between the numbers. No number is ever missing. There is. You don't understand. You don't remember anything. A number can fall out of the sky like Don Quixote when he fell down the crack. Don Quixote didn't fall down a crack. He descended into a cave using a ladder made of rope. Anyhow, Don Quixote isn't relevant. He isn't real. He is a hero. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say what I said. Of course the Don is a hero, and of course he is real. What I meant to say is that what happened to him doesn't happen to people anymore. People live their lives from beginning to end without falling down cracks. They do fall. They fall down cracks, and you can't see them anymore because they can't get out. You said so yourself. Now you are confusing cracks with holes. You are thinking of people dying and getting buried in graves, in holes in the ground. A grave is made by grave diggers using spades. It's not something unnatural like a crack. There is a rustle of clothing, and Inez materializes out of the dark. I have been calling and calling, she says crossly. Does no one ever listen? Thank you.